So let's just talk through the GROW model and the goal. So obviously for some of you, well for most of you, maybe structuring a coaching conversation is new. So it would be thinking about what would be some useful questions that you could ask to help the person identify what the goal of this conversation will be. Any suggested questions?
Should we set the goals or should we ask the student to set the goals?
You ask the student. So this is about the issue is belonged by the student or the person that you're coaching. So you don't set the goals, which may be something very different for you in terms of how you normally deal with a situation or a conversation. So you're asking the person, what do they want to get out of this conversation? What does success look like? So the goal. So these are some suggested questions, okay, for setting goals or helping the person to set a goal. What do you want to achieve from this conversation? What problem are you trying to resolve? What would you like to focus on? So what's important for you in this? What would be a good outcome from today? What do you want to take away? So they're typical kind of high-level goal-setting questions. And they're open-ended questions. It's not, do you want this or do you want that?
Does this need to be discussed before the meeting? I mean, like 2 days before the meeting?
No, it's in the moment. So for example, coaching you can do in a conversation. Somebody comes up to you and says, look, I need your advice. I've got a real problem with a colleague and I don't know how to solve it. And the quick and easy way to do it, potentially, is to say, okay, I've had this problem before, so you need to do this. But actually what you could do is, what would be a good outcome from this conversation for you? What would be helpful? So you're asking them what's going to be helpful. You're not making a decision about what you think is going to be helpful for them. Okay, so it's about you're thinking it from their point of view. So it's about listening, really, and asking some questions. So you want to check out the reality of the issue or of the problem or the change that's required. So you want to know, what's really happening right now? And you want to know what they've done so far, because you may make some assumptions that they've already tried something, but you want to know what they've done already. Has this situation arisen before? If so, what did they do last time? Did it work? And you really want to know more and more. So you just want to say, tell me more. Because they give you a high level, but you want to know a little bit more so you can get a real picture of the reality of that situation. You want to know how it's impacting on the person. So what's the impact for you on this? Why, because there's a reason that they've brought it. So what's the impact? You want to know whether it's affecting them tremendously or whether it's not that important, or if it's very important, then you obviously want to drill down and find out the reality. And you want to know what control they have over this situation or the outcome, because it may be that it's something not right in their control or their power of control, but it's something that they might be able to influence. So it's really sort of working out, what's within their circle of power and control to get the outcome. And what are the barriers? What's stopping them from actually doing what they really want to do? What's the barriers to this situation? So they're kind of reality check questions. And then this is about opening up. So this is about exploring with them what are their options in coming to a solution or coming to the outcome, an outcome that is going to help them move forward. So you want to know what ideas they've had to achieve this, because they will have had to think about it. And I think the thing here as well is to try not to be judgmental in thinking, that's a ridiculous idea, or you must have known that wasn't going to work, because this is their situation. So it's very much about, okay, so what else? What have you tried? What else could you do? What would happen if you did that? and just kind of really take them down that road of exploring each option that they may come up with. How else could they get some influence in the situation? Is there another person that they could gain some help and support from? And the other thing that works quite well in terms of options is if you were to ask the person, so if there was someone from your team that came to you with this problem, what would you tell them? Because quite often we find it easier to tell others what to do than to kind of explore that ourselves. So it's sometimes nice to put it in a different person point of view. So if someone from your team came and asked you the same question, what would be your best advice that you would give them? And the thing for all of these is to try and give time for people to think and reflect. Because quite often, if there's a silence, people jump in. And you jump in because you think someone hasn't understood, but actually it may be that they're thinking and processing and trying to think of answers to your questions. So that's another good thing to practice, is that not interrupting. And then the wrap-up, or the willingness to act, is really about looking at next steps. So exploring, and this is a good time to maybe summarise what you've heard. So you've come with this. We've explored that you've already tried such and such, but you've also thought that you might want to contact this person to support you, and that you might actually have a conversation with this person, etc. So then you want to know when they're going to do it, what actions they will take, and how they're going to gain support for this. So it's about getting some firm actions and some commitment to when it's going to happen. So it sounds very straightforward, but I think it takes some practice, especially when you're not used to asking these open questions and in this structured way. And this is just a practice. So would it be okay then to sort of get into threes? I think we've got just under an hour. So let me just see. I think if we had 15, 15 and 15, that would probably work. So I think if we get into threes, as one of you is the coach to practice asking these questions and holding the structure of the conversation. One person comes with a problem or an issue that they want to explore and have an outcome in mind, and the other person is to observe. And I think observing is quite important because you can see how a conversation unfolds, and it's also an opportunity, because there'll be an opportunity after each 15-minute slot to give 5 minutes of feedback, just to say, what did it feel like to be coached and to coach, and what did the observer notice? And there's a little checklist for observers, and Alicia and I will sort of walk round as well, not to get involved in your conversation, but just to kind of listen from a distance. And if you've got any queries or questions, then you can just ask us as well, because it is just practice. And the first one is to make sure that you try and use the GROW model. So I think if nothing else, to try and get a goal established is key. And sometimes that can take up half a conversation to actually help that person understand what is it that they want to get out of this conversation. Because you might make some assumptions and go down a route that might not help them. So the goal is key. Check out the reality, explore the options, and then finish with, okay, so what are you going to do? So I think we'll give you a time check at about 2 minutes towards the end of that coaching conversation so that you can really help to nail some action and when, okay? So the structure is key for the observer to think about, but also, are the questions open or are they closed? So you only get a yes or no. And try and avoid giving advice and telling. You probably will find yourself doing that, and that's okay, but the observer will help to flag that to you. And also it's about trying to set up a rapport or an environment that's non-judgmental. So, no raising of eyebrows or, that kind of the non-verbal judgmental things that kind of might sort of put off the coachee or the person that's trying to find some solutions. So they're the things to look for. What would be helpful for me to put on the screen? The grow? Yeah? Okay. So if I've put them in clusters, but you might need to spread out a little bit. But can you get into threes and just agree who's going to have a go first at coaching, who's got something that they can be coached on, and who's going to be an observer? So if we can stop now, I'll just very quickly, just in terms of wandering around, just pick up on a couple of things that I noticed, and then you're going to get some feedback from your observer in the group. Is that in a couple of groups I noticed all three people talking, and I think that there's something about the person that should be doing most of the talking is the person with the issue, and the coach to ask the questions, and the observer is to observe. So there's something about allowing that process to happen. There's also some feedback around, but the conversation didn't follow from grow. When someone's presenting their issue, they very often go into the detail of the reality, and that's fine. And actually, you can listen to that and reflect back what you've heard, and then go back into, so what is the most important thing in this conversation? What's the outcome that you want? So that you can establish a goal and then work through it. And I heard lots of advice being given in a couple of groups, and there's something about trying to resist that giving advice and just asking some questions. But within the groups, if the observer now can just feed back, and actually perhaps the coach describe very quickly in the group what it felt like to coach, and the coachee, the person with the issue, what did it feel like in that conversation? Did they feel listened to? Did they feel that they came away with some actions? And was that goal really established? So have a quick conversation in your groups about what that felt like, and for the observer just to give some feedback. 5 minutes. Yeah? So can I get you to, because we're a bit tight on time, can I get you to swap round? So someone that hasn't been coached to be coached, and then observer and coach. So you can work it out between the three of you so that you all get an opportunity to play one of those roles. Okay? So do you want to swap round? Yeah? No? A different issue. So whatever the person has come with, that's the issue to be coached on. Yeah? So make sure that you all get an opportunity to be an observer, a coach, and coachee. So you've got 15 minutes. Well, it's great to see there's some deep conversations going on, so trying to close them is quite difficult, so that's a good sign. So there's probably not time to get feedback in the group, but if you want to do that in your little groups over coffee, then that would be great. Can I just get your attention? Yeah, sorry. So yes, do give some feedback over coffee, but we're going to break for coffee at 20 past, so that you've got a bit of time in between. But one of the things that I'd quite like you to consider, a bit of reflection. How did you find having a coaching conversation? Some smiles. So on reflection, can I just get you to think about these three things? And you don't have to have 3 and 2 and 1 of each. But it would be really good to capture, and I don't know whether you can find time now or over coffee, on a post-it note, one of these, just to write up something and put on the flip chart things that I need to help me take this approach forward. Is it more practice? Is it just to think about it a bit more. So really think about what would help me to take this forward. Things I'm going to change or things I might do differently. What am I going to commit to do? Just 2 things maybe that you might commit to do differently to embrace this coaching style. And what are some of the barriers to overcome? So just have a little self-reflection, and if you can, just write on one of these post-its and just put it against. If you can populate each line with something on a post-it note, because then we can theme them at the end. So it's anonymous, but we'll theme them, because there may be some common things that are barriers or common things that need to change, and that would be quite interesting. And maybe that's something that we can do something about. So can I get you to do that now, and then grab a coffee?